So I now also will stress some points in your evaluation work. What do you make a focus when you evaluate public website? Actually, reliability is one point you need to evaluate. So the public website could contain a scope of information about the identity of organization and what actual managing editor in some cases, and the principal objective to make the website accessible to the public, and the kind of network, and you will also verify the kind of scope of information you make available, and the kind of usefulness could be sensed or determined to serve your personal objective. So entirely depends on your choice and preference. The reliability would be one point, and the reputation of that website also be considered. And it should be trustworthy. Is a similar concern in other aspects, and also precision or accuracy would matter in many cases. How do you assuage yourself to base your research on a vulnerable source of information? The public website would be questioned in structure and ways of approach, and the kind of general sensibility in your experience about the public website. But you now have some serious dispute which affects the client interest of clients very significant. In some cases, fatal to see any division between success and failure. So you would be highly sensitive, and in some cases nervous about the accuracy of information. Then how do you rely on the kind of website? So many points in consideration of your evaluating work. So the situation and contingency, on the individual research project, or what it needs of a research person, a researcher, is a factor to evaluate the website. So as I make a point, for example, you'll see the printout delivered in next class. The researcher may have put in several conditions in the pursuit of research. In some cases, they would not be well exposed to the area of law. So the kind of time or budget constraints is fairly enormous. In that case, some steps would be advisable. Please confirm the context of discussion in your printout. You will see some different plan if your status tends to plan 2. For example, when you have lots of time, but you may be familiar with this area of law or not. In this case, often the legal researcher would be required of more than a week research plan. And in some cases, the few hours per day plan would be adequate to address your status. But then challenge is more scheduling in this case, so no real time at all. And you may not be familiar with this area role. Then perhaps you'll be rushed to complete the steps of statutory law or administrative law research required for Plan 1. But there is no way around those steps in problems involving the kind of primary authority. In this modern legal world, statutes, rules, and administrative law often are involved in even a simple research problem. So in this case, you will also follow the point BC on page 2 of 15. After Plan 1 steps are completed, you must zero in quickly on finding the most relevant cases that you have collected using the annotations, the statute or law. Use the online services or digest, find the most current and most relevant cases, shepherdize or key cite them to find more cases. And one strategy is to squeeze in one good treatise or the restatement just to make sure you have not missed the big picture or omitted a crucial point about the law in your analysis. So you may receive the work order from your supervisor early in the morning, and you will be required to progress your research over lunchtime and at the afternoon hours, and finally must meet the due time to be presented to your supervisor in the evening or at night time. So the research question should be addressed in any simplistic way. The kind of no and yes answer would be desired, perhaps by your supervisor. So exercise this process in the situation of this kind, where you are to be on a few hours today plan. In other case, you cannot or do not want to spend much time, but you are not familiar with this area role or this area of law. This case would be similar to the previous version, and this is also a conundrum. You need time, but you do not have the time. So the difference is that you are actually busy, so could hardly make a time to deliberate on the research question and also the required search for all the materials, and might be so. And then if the issue really is time, I only have X days to do this, reverse the plan, so that you at least read the restatement or treatise first and do the plan. Research for problem involving a statute, rule, or administrative regulation. Then run case law searches online or with digest. In this way, you have better chance of figuring out the big picture, all the issues and differences and constitutional problems before zeroing in on individual cases. So the legal research is distinct, as I've reiterated over the course, from that of a social science. The general social science discipline would have some other way to approach it. Most plainly, we usually call issues to highlight the kind of a a central point to be addressed in the research. Nonetheless, they would use a research questions, and often statistical method would be employed in some qualitative and quantitative distinction is popular, and the course would be considered a core subject to bring the research of social science. The legal researcher would have in that contrast a two phases research. Often interdisciplinary research would form the backdrop and some precision to make it socialized with the final outcome of research answer. So a preliminary investigation is the initial, actually comprise the initial stage of research, often times in legal research project. So you have been introduced to the kind of general source of legal information, and Wikipedia is one example to be referred in the initial stage of preliminary investigation. Another legal nature of encyclopedia is also source to form the background information in your mindset and what a kind of basic disposition in pursuit of your legal research. However, most important stage would be processed involving the kind of primary sources, so administrative law, statute, case laws, pertaining to your fact pattern, and also I make a point to be stressed in this case about importance of fact-finding. So investigation need to be thorough. In some cases, you will make a visitation with your client or supervisor to search for more details, since the current confirmation about facts, others would be insufficient to create any final solution. So that is also relevant. In any case, in your research product has some final legal opinion you suggest oftentimes. Of course, the situation, the legal researcher has to be responsive, is not same across. So, in some cases, law professor would be trusted with some research project. In that case, they may be required to investigate histories, and also the progress of legal system and implications to be brought on the current system. Any suggestions and insights, especially in the context of the United States, the legal history is a popular subject to be researched. Many constitutional scholars would work on legal history. So, for example, bibliographical studies about the Supreme Court justices would be one of them, and also the kind of research, lexicography. Have you ever come across the word lexicography? It is the term to the attitude and the kind of professional ways of approach involving history research. So you might know the kind of famous name, who is Friedman, for example, one of eminent legal historian in times, and also you will see in the printout delivered last class some important description, very representative to explain general and a mainstream of legal research involving history and law. So research in legal lexicography is the concern. He is a pioneer in this work. What is historical lexicography? Language and law would be an element to think about. Historical lexicography is the study of the etymology, chronology, meaning of words and phrases by means of method first proposed in Germany in the early 19th century and later exemplified by the Oxford English Dictionary. This historical method requires that each meaning of each word be traced to the extent practicable to its earliest appearance in print, and that all developments in the word's uses be illustrated by dated and documented quotations using the word. The project of tracing words and phrases to their earliest appearances in print is an enormous and difficult one, involving research of highly sophisticated and ingenious nature. Now, however, human ingenuity can be supplemented by automated searches, retrieving the earlier uses of term in the documents covered by a database. So, you have some experience about recent proposal, Second Amendment of the United States, and I once exaggerate the context of development by saying comma debate. They would make a highlight on comma, so it is truly meaningful. Well, how do you consider this? Actually, you will see the Second Amendment has the origin about militia, the dictatorship in mainland Britain in colonial period, and Cromwell is a notorious person, and the monarchy and parliament have exchanged their prestige and power, and recurrence of monarchy and abolition, its abolition, and it has repeated in times and period, and the kind of situation is dangerous. And in the process, and we consider the kind of militia about life and how to ensure their lives. It's actually a natural right to bear arms against a threat of killing others, and the concept is also related with self-defense, and it also has some implications about westward expansion in the United States. So see the Hollywood scenes of cowboy, actual the peace officer, sheriff, to be responsible about maintenance of region or capital. So they bear arms to fight against the stress and other gangsters. The concept is deeply rooted in history. So how do you reform that in any alteration or modification could be thinkable? And you also consider the interested parties about the reform. So history is highly pertinent when we understand the American legal system. I once mentioned psychology, sociology in shaping American legal system. In this class, I also add a history. So you will be well versed with judicial review, the kind of important institution to sustain modern democracy. You'll see, and we have a dual authority about national judicial powers, the Constitutional Court and the Supreme Court of Republic of Korea. The Constitutional Court will be a final authority to say what is wrong and what is right in terms of constitution, national constitution. And unitary system is now undergone in the United States. And United States is the original state, as I have once preached. So the system has been imported, in some cases variegated to shoot the lens of a specific nation. So the passion was different. So the constitutional court system could be more in cases like Germany or Republic of Korea. And you will know the popular name of case, Marbury versus Madison. So what is the word repugnancy? The Chief Justice Marshall have used the word. The law repugnant to the Constitution of the United States is not law of this land. So the constitutional scholar, also in the aid of professors from Department of History, have consulted historically and traced the origin of the word repugnancy. What is repugnancy? How did the Chief Justice Marshall arrived at the point that he felt need to use that word? Often the political leaders and eminent figure in the independence age would be a British trained English lawyer. So James Madison, John Jay, and Marshall, or would have some career experience in colonial period. So they have been inculcated with the terms and jargons used in the colonial Congress and state practices before independence, and they would perhaps surf through the shelves of law library to trace the historic documents and any scholar writings or professional writings. In some cases, individual writings have been compiled. So in the article, you have some understanding and basic sense about legal history research, and the article is titled Researching Legal History in Digital Age. It was authored by Morris Cohen and presented in 2006. So in his article, you can chart many important transformations about compilation of historic documents and also its informatization through digitalization and availability to the public use. And the article has structured kind of developments which corresponds with the what time period. So the materials and documents of colonial period would be collected by what public website or information providers. For example, how do you search the Cox document? Cox is one of classic figures to embrace the ideas of higher law. Judicial review would be what actually originated in his idea, and we also consider some brilliant success to compile English case law and statute. And in this context, the English reports, a full reprint, would be most productive source when you consider this area of information. And it is very surprising to be provided with second sources of English law. English court decisions and statutes are not the only sources that relate to the reception of English law in the American colleges. And you will have some words from the late legal historian Joseph H. Smith in his useful essay, English Criminal Law in America, lists other materials that should be considered when determining how law was received in America. He suggests studying royal charters, gubernatorial commissions and instructions, colonial acts and laws, the opinions of colonial administrators and officials, and the views of English commentators. Several databases provide online access to vast body of secondary English legal material published during the American colonial period, including the sources of Smith cited. The most important of these are early English books online. So you will have www.com, EEBO-CHAD-WYCK-com home, which includes books listed in short title catalog 1475 through 1640, and in the wing short title catalog 1641 through 17, and the 18th century collections online. The 18th century collections online is fairly exploitable in my surmise. If you need to research this English second sources in colonial period. And English trial practice also are being compiled. The website name is Proceedings of the Old Bailey versus London. It is an electronic resource of more than 100,000 criminal trials held at London Central Criminal Court. And you'll find it surprising to see many executions in the colonial period by the initiative of individuals. So legal system is primitive, as you suspect, and what hundreds of thousands executions have been made by a private person, and in many cases local potted waters, and also the local Congress is the center of a colonial rule and wood exchange in ties with the mainland Britain, and it is also surprising that the lower mainland would be reformed in adjustment with the condition of colonial colonies and others. And as I've said, the post-colonial period, what it means is the rapid regionalization, especially in terms of judicial practice. So the earlier reporting has been charted. You see in past illustrations of the state of Pennsylvania and others. And the case law would have witnessed fair speed of expansion. The rate to produce cases is very accelerated. It's over states. Initially 13 states in the east coast of the United States, actually original state, and Midwest and westward. So national legal system have multiplied, and the kind of case reporting system and also publication and other materials have been collected and in volumes, of course, and also veins of now standing U.S. laws. Accounts of colonial American cases and trials, and many useful websites. Charles Evans, American Bibliography, my website. The Family History Library of Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Also source about court proceedings. The collection in some cases includes more than 2.4 million rolls of microfilm records, 742,000 microfiche, and 700 electronic resources grow constantly. In 2003, approximately 50,000 rolls of film were added. The Family History Library is one highlight to deal with accounts of colonial American cases and trials. And interestingly, you will find some information source about personal papers, correspondence, and memoirs. Please consider, to visit Archives USA and Archive Grid. Then there are hundreds of thousands of published manuscript collections that have research potential in American legal history in the colonial period and beyond. Also, the judicial papers collection of the Harvard Law School Library is a good example. We can look forward to the day when these microfilm files have been digitized and can be searched more effectively. The papers of individual lawyers and judges are another important resource for the study of colonial American law. The papers of John Adams, Alexander Hamilton, Thomas Jefferson, John Marshall, James Madison, and John Jay. The papers of Madison and Jay are now searchable in electronic format. And also on page 3A4, you will have some research information about secondary American sources. William Penn's The Excellent Privilege of Liberty and Property, being the right of freeborn subjects of England, can be found early American imprint. So early American imprint are very useful website in this presentation. And bibliography of the early American law. And also the article have illuminated the kind of a post-colonial progress, transition to the new republic, and you also have some explanation about the consequence developed in modern period, 1789 to present. So let us curtail other part and may have a focus on the public website, the Library of Congress, the American Memory, www.loc.gov.nn, and A Century of Lawmaking for New Nation, U.S. Congressional Documents and Debates, and Westrow's Bison Database and the web edition of Founders Constitution. All are helpful information site, you see, to be concerned of the period transition to the new republic. But actually now we have many sources. We arrive at general point about evaluation of such transformation. How do you find it useful? Actually, it is very useful, and most importantly, the big breakthrough have been said of the introduction of the 1970s of LexisNexis and Westrow. These are two large computerized legal research databases that affected both historical and current legal research in ways unbelievable to early generations. And also a Federal Reporter and National Archive database. So these two major commercial providers would come in scope of concern, not restricted to the legal history research. The current research of current law would highly depend on their service, oftentimes, and over many law people. Thomson Gale database, making a modern law, U.S. Supreme Court records and briefs. And the compilation is exhaustive, as you expect. So sources are diverse, even including New York Times and London Times, and you will see some of a scene about presidential message to evaluate the CISG law. It was made around 1980s, and at the time that the United States explored those strengths and weaknesses of CISG in terms of their national strategy, the same situation to be imposed on yourself, on you, and hypothetical, of course. So it is surprising that the White House have provided a very fine and persuasive account of CISG, and what dealt respectively to meet each article. So this article has this ambit of what a legislative objective and the kind of implications to interact with business world and others, and point of justice to be highlighted, and the kind of impact on the American businesses and others, and very helpful to see the documents. So the scope of compilation and provision of service is of course extensive. And I also make a focus the strengths of commercial businesses about this competitive follow-up reporting. So cases would be most of them, which our rivals, any other information providers, especially against the normal free public website. And also LexisNexis serial set. Redex is a very important database, and also one other ramification of this database is American Broadsides and Ephemera Series, 1760 through 1900. Now enables historians, which now enables historians to browse or search thousands of law-related publications printed between 1760 and 1900. There are a scope of implications about the transformations, and perhaps the contrast is very ironic between history and digitalization of information. We now have been much indebted to development technology. So the online sources and ways of provision of legal information through public website greatly helpful. That is hardly deniable. Then other aspect also comes in our consideration. So consider the page to be briefed on negative impacts of technology. Basically, the content and substances would not be changed. The focus is merely on the means and method of provision of legal information. So online ways to disseminate the ideas and the information actually embedded and untainted, what actually the substance and content will remain same. These days we have claimed some of historic things from Japanese occupation or possession. So I have litigated seriously in the court of Japan, and on the kind of necessities and home use awareness or other materials have been claimed back to the public clear. How do you see the progress? So history is very fantastic if we have some sense to get through the development and interactions and others. What kind of artifact in some cases have been raised by exterior powers. That is the exact case, perhaps, from the context of Japanese recovery, I consider. And North and South Korea have some tone of consonance in claim back the kind of materials. So we are Korean nations to echo uniform voice against Japanese imperialism and kind of great success. So the content substance would be tangible, and librarians. The author of this article is the library professor of Yale Law School, Cohen, and their wisdom and experience is very consequential to promote the studies of law students, and even very complementary to support the research of law professor. So their insight and evaluation of transformation is very precise and very implicating to reflect ourselves in activities. So in some cases, it is true that we have kept through the kind of traditional practice, what is stuff on the bookshelves, brick and mortar law library. You will have some fine space zoned to show the pleasure and others say so. Located in the left part of main administration in this university, and their strengths and purge through the relevant materials would often be a strength to accomplish many research success. So traditional ways seem to have strengths in some aspect when we assess the point that pertaining to individual or researcher. The online availability provide ease and convenience oftentimes, but could distract the attention of researcher, since the materials would be enormous and could be exacerbated when we talk about focus. So please keep any suitable mode of research operation. So no one point is determinative in this case. So please exploit the online resources to make up for your advantage. In other sense, you will draw some so from lessons of practice, and also the author would illustrate some points about negative effects of technology. One point is that the fear that the paper holding would be discarded once digitized. So now the era of online interaction and information, even a newspaper article is now available in the form of online presence. Then it is wise to keep one copy as a guarantee and security, and the fear that they'll disappear and the information never exists in print would be one point. when you are concerned of negative impacts of technology. Potential danger of permanent loss may exist when libraries transfer ownership of unique holdings to commercial vendors without adequate assurance of retention and preservation. And also, you might have the kind of experience that you regret to take a memo or note from the sources you have retrieved online or others. So please keep tracking the pages and make a note in order about your research plan. So you will save your redundancy to visit again the libraries for this, and also the website will have curtailed the information. So that is one wisdom. And the point is the ease of collecting apparently relevant authorities by electronic searching has sometimes led to superficial and sloppy research, particularly on the part of students. So students is often a beginner of legal research, and their easy exposure to online sources would make the research superficial and sloppy. That is a precise statement about our recent dealings and experience. Cheating by plagiarism has certainly been made easier, but so has its detection. Bob Burling has observed that full text searching often leads to factually similar materials while missing some conceptually relevant references, and old-fashioned digest searching is sometimes more effective than electronic searching. The online sources would enable full text searching. So, as I said, they've been impressed by enormous number of pages. How do you handle that? Would often not be the case when you use a brick and mortar. You will keep note and may pay attention to the corner page, what you've seen in there as well as about university public relations or law. There are also fears about long-term physical survival of electronic data, as I've said. Fortunately, we haven't seen much evidence of either Luddite reaction to these changes or an inhibiting fear of their negative consequence. But while we celebrate our new opportunity, we should be aware that there are some potential dark-side problems. So please keep on your self-assessment about the progress and transformations. You are a legal researcher and must be complex and strategic about transformation. So it may be too early to expect concrete results from most of the innovations, actual innovations. Kind of historic artifacts, individual writings have now been available through online sources. I've described, but now it has been 30 years, a whole generation, since LexisNexis and Westlaw became available to legal historians. We couldn't have expected visible impacts of electronic resources in the important 1970s books by Lawrence Friedman, Morton Horwitz, William Nelson, or in early volumes of Holmes' Device History of Supreme Court of the United States. Let us take an example involving bibliographic research. So that is one preserve considered very important in terms of legal history research. And Ken Neumeyers is an important scholar to research the biography of Supreme Court Justice Joseph Story. He made two pieces of article, which is very impacting. One is from 1985, and the other to be concerned of Chief Justice John Marshall, have appeared in 2001. In terms of legal research, the first piece of article would be performed the process of research operation involving a traditional way of research. He might work extensively, spending hours and days in the law library. Actually, physical presence would be required. And in the second case, he would utilize the online sources, since it is stupid to spend many of his effort in the law library. So perhaps the second piece would be based on the online research. Then compare its extent of dealings and the kind of merits and the kind of precision or neatness and the kind of message repercussion would not be dissimilar. So how do you find any differences from this kind of innovative innovation? And one interesting use of new technology is Dave Shep's work in producing a publicly searchable database of indexes and translations of the case in the yearbooks from the original French. As I've introduced, the law of French and legal intelligence has impacted significantly in the development of English law. So the historic research could well be complemented with the source of French authority and one website to be available. Okay, I consider some point about development of online resources if you are a legal researcher. Then we'll complete this class with a third session. Let us quit here and see you later in the third session. Thank you for your attention.